Hey, are you worried about tomorrow? How about just today? Or the next few hours? What are you so worried about? Is it interacting with that one person? Or finding yourself in that one place? Or maybe having to do that one task? Do these things cause tension in your body? Does your mind go blank with fear? Are you embarrassed by your own reaction to something so mundane? Is it ruining your life? Do you have social anxiety disorder? Watamote is one of my all-time favorite animes because I watched it as a freshman in school, and that was, wow, the most painful time to relate to this show. The title translates to, no matter how I look at it, it's you guys' fault I'm not popular. So, Watamote is a story about a girl, a very unpopular girl who just started high school, Tomoko Kuroki. Her goal throughout the series is to become popular, and through her resolve we just get the loveliest, most tasteful, heaping servant of secondhand embarrassment with a side of cringe. And if you're like me, you might find yourself relating to a scary amount of Tomoko's problems. As one watches the series, one might wonder, what is wrong with her? Well, Tomoko struggles with social anxiety, and due to this she has problems interacting with others. Now, think back to the title. In Tomoko's mind, it's not her fault she's not popular, but everyone else is instead. This, however, is just simply not the case. And in today's video, I will explain how social anxiety disorder can damage someone's social life and how it prevents Tomoko from achieving her goal. The first thing that we need to know about Tomoko is that she doesn't sleep well. I mean, it's obvious through her baggy dark eyes, and this is not uncommon amongst people with anxiety disorders. The feeling of restlessness can cause disruption in sleeping habits. People who suffer from social anxiety most likely started out unable to fall asleep due to their thoughts about their day and self-reflecting on interactions and maybe worry about future interactions. However, as this becomes too frequent, said person will not go to bed at that time anymore. Instead, they'll probably put it off and fill their time at night with something that isn't their anxious thoughts. Tomoko from the beginning of the series is actually shown staying up late, playing games and surfing the web. And in the very last episode, Tomoko is actually awake at night and she self-reflects on everything that she has done over the year, and all those embarrassing moments come flooding into her mind, which begins to give her anxiety and she starts to hyperventilate. As Tomoko struggles throughout the night, we can actually see out the window that it's almost sunrise, so this was something that she was struggling and thinking about all night long. Once again, this is not uncommon amongst people that have social anxiety. The real problems come in when people start to become sleep deprived over their anxious thoughts at night. A lack of sleep can cause lower alertness, lower concentration, higher irritability, and confusion. This inhibits your ability to perform tasks that require logical reasoning. Being sleep deprived makes for social interactions to be just a little more difficult. With a lack of attention to detail or ability to follow along with conversation, you can see why Tomoko can have trouble paying attention to what's around her or clearly understanding simple situations. All that, and let's be honest, the dark rings around her eyes definitely don't make her very approachable. Tiredness definitely makes for laziness, and this is to say that Tomoko is not putting much effort into appearances, except that one time she did. Okay, now obviously the key problem with social anxiety is the social aspect. People who suffer from social anxiety fear the scenario and will often go out of their way to avoid it. The very idea of having to interact with someone can be reason enough to worry for someone with SAD. I'll give you two examples with Tomoko. The first being when Tomoko overhears that her art class will be in Paris that day. Tomoko becomes super anxious over the idea that she even has to work with someone else. So much so that she doesn't even attend her art class. Instead, she decides to make it up by the end of the day. Example number two, and a very relatable one to me, is Tomoko in gym class. She stands away from everyone, and every time she's shown in gym class, she plays with no one. She's always just by herself. Tomoko obviously takes very active steps to avoid everyone else, and she went so far as to exaggerate a gym class injury to leave school early. She was extremely relieved and happy, one of the few times we see her happy, and this is because she's leaving gym class and therefore leaving any interactions with anyone else. Tomoko, despite her goal of becoming popular, never actually does anything to put herself in a position to talk and interact and make more friends. Instead, what we see is the more common solution people with SAD attempt. The attempt usually has to do with something like putting yourself in a spot where you are noticed, but you do not have to engage or make the first initial attempt to be recognized. This is obviously a really flawed way of thinking because you can't just expect to be noticed off of minute differences in your own behavior. Tomoko tries to fit into tropes. This is the only way she tries to become popular, really. This is ultimately like a safety net for anyone that has SAD, because remember, they're afraid of scrutiny. So in their mind, if they can get someone else to speak to them first and the situation goes down badly, it's a little better on their mind considering that it isn't their fault. So let me just give you a few examples of how Tomoko tries to have others engage with her technically. Tomoko buys cute panties, even though no one will ever actually see them. She also tries to eat a lot like a, quirky anime girl, and that also backfires. Tomoko tries to be a quiet and mysterious character. Backfires. And she tries to be a hero by killing a roach in the room. Once again, backfires. All failed attempts to gain friends. But why? Because none of it actually puts her in a position to speak about herself to others. These are just impressions of her character that she is hoping are good enough to make someone come over and talk to her. Now, I'm not saying that these kinds of things don't work, but they are poor attempts to get someone to befriend you. So ultimately, what I'm trying to get at is that even though Tomoko wants to become popular, she's trying to do it in a very avoidant way, in a way that she can kind of avoid interacting with other people, but instead have those people come to her. Best way I can kind of explain this behavior is if you have siblings. I don't know if you've ever had this moment where you really want something but you're afraid to ask your parents. So instead you have your younger sibling go over and ask them for you, and you're kind of like, but don't tell them that I asked you to ask them. A person, especially adolescents, who suffer from SAD can form really negative opinions on their peers solely because of their lack of ability to socialize. This is to say that people with SAD might get a little jealous of others that they see in public who can be very social, very extroverted, very friendly. You might have even experienced this yourself growing up in school. It never feels nice to be left out, but when this is your daily life, it can feel just a little bit more harsh. Tomoko tries in her very awkward way to get people to interact with her, but it always fails, and as the show progresses, Tomoko's classmates don't include her in activities assuming that she would want to be left alone. And Tomoko, despite wanting friends, is actually rather judgmental of her peers, more so when she fails to meet her social goals. Take for example, in the beginning of the show. Tomoko tries to be noticed by dressing better. She makes the worst attempt to dress nicely and even vomits at the sight of her own appearance. Part of her outfit idea was making her skirt shorter, and after it all fails, she proclaims that short skirts are for anyway. Another example is when Tomoko says she wishes terrorists came to her school, after just seeing a group of friends chatting and making plans to hang out after school. So it's obvious that Tomoko becomes quite bitter towards other people when she feels lesser in that way. This works against her because she fails to understand why certain things work for others, and never gives a second glance to understand someone else's point of view. For Tomoko, it is just her against the world, and the world seemingly just mocks her every day for all her failures. So, let's wrap everything up. Tomoko Kuroki suffers from social anxiety disorder. Tomoko's anxiety makes it difficult for her to interact with people in a way that is comfortable and realistic for her. From the beginning of the story to the end, Tomoko dreads interactions with other people. So, what we have left by the end of the series is a girl whose anxiety dictates her every decision. Due to her anxiety, Tomoko does not sleep well, causing her appearance and function to falter. Tomoko gets anxious just thinking about interacting with others. She gets anxious replying to strangers, and therefore she avoids interactions with anyone and everyone. However, Tomoko desperately wants to become popular. She wants to have friends, but she can come off just as rude and disinterested in others because of how often she avoids classmates. And again, she's avoiding these things because of her social anxiety, but she also makes these terrible attempts to get attention to herself, but that only brings an awkward amount of failure. And when Tomoko fails, she becomes judgmental of others, causing a block on potential friendships. Tomoko's fears, demeanor, and judgment ultimately keep her from her goal throughout the series, and we as the audience never get the satisfaction of seeing her succeed. And that's fine. That's okay. Because you know what, no matter how bittersweet it all seems, this is just the reality of living with social anxiety disorder.